Indeed, it's a special day, and we are so happy today to have a sit down with former Prime Minister of Grenada for 23 plus years, Dr.The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, as well as the first leader of His Majesty's opposition and political leader of the New National Party. And for this period of 23 years being Prime Minister, most of the years he was the Minister of National Security. And today, with the issue of crime and violence, the upsurge in the country, I think it is rather important and timely to have that discussion with Dr. Mitchell as it relates to what we're seeing unfolding in the country. And with me on the set this morning, today as well, is Selwyn Noel, a veteran journalist for over 3 decades. And when I talk about veteran, he reminds me of the late Leslie Pierre and Alistair Hughes, two outstanding Grenadian journalists who have gone before and would have paved the way. And Selwyn is seen in this slide. So I want to thank you for being here with us. But most importantly, Dr. Mitchell, with what we're seeing at this point in time, and let's look at it. As of the 18th of July 2023, we had some 14 homicides in the country, while at the same time in 2022 we had only 3. This must be a worrying trend for everyone in the country. And also we have seen some 6 suicides, and within that number we had 2 young ladies. Again, this also is worrying. We need to look at those issues. What are the prevailing conditions, that is, or the environment that is giving rise to this sort of crime and violence in the country? And there are other issues of crime which I wouldn't go into at this point. But Doc, I will now turn the mic over to you, because we would like to hear you. We would like to hear from you, and I know the country needs to hear from you how we can deal with this issue at this point in time.
Brothers and sisters, let me say this. I think this is important and timely intervention, because it is well known that we are facing a national celebration of our annual carnival. And this is a time that people want to relax and enjoy themselves. And it is a good thing for the country, and it brings in a lot of visitors to this country. And clearly a lot of our young people want to play their mass, their jab, and to really give off steam, so to speak. So it is a crucial time for all of us, and therefore we need all this stability and peace and good atmosphere in this time. But clearly, as was just pointed out, with the present atmosphere of state of crime in our country, and the problem related to a number of suicides and other incidents that some of them not even reported, it's quite worrying to all the citizens of this country. And what was, in my view, a bit worrying more is that we heard little or nothing in the last several weeks from the Ministry of National Security, and which of course must be of serious concern. As I pointed out in Parliament, the issues of peace and order and stability, it's not about any political party. In other words, we cannot make this a political issue, because when the country reaches a period of instability and when incidents of violence occur, anyone, whether the MNP, NDC, can in fact be engulfed by it. So this has to be an issue that must concern every citizen. But we expect the government to lead. That's precisely what it's all about. I'm also very concerned, particularly as it relates to the issue of young people. Because young people, they're impressionable. We pass through stages of youth too. And we know how excited we can be, and how incidents can in fact make us believe that we can do what we want. I mean, we know that. We pass through the stage. So we have persons with more experience in the country would understand that we have to provide guidance and support as much as is possible. But it's clear that with this incidence of violence particularly among our young population, it must worry us. And therefore we must do what we can to arrest the situation and work as a country, as all stakeholders. So I would expect that every single important group in our country, and everyone has a role, we expect to see the churches playing a much more vigorous role in the question of support and advice and initiatives to help deal with the situation. Clearly, as I mentioned before, government has to lead. We expect to see the private sector, because the private sector is being affected. Because as they perceive to be instability or issues of crime in the country, and that appears to be a worry to everybody, it must worry the person investing in the country. And because of the economic situation facing the country, the businesses are affected. So we would expect that the business representation from various sectors of the business community should be involved in the process of attempting to find some solution to the problem we are now facing. A trade union movement cannot remove itself from this, because their workers are being affected by what is taking place in the individual communities. And in addition, the more you have a perception of crime increasing in the country, the less there would be investment and the less workers would be employed. So it affects the trade union. So the trade union should be involved. Non-governmental communities, the people involved in various sectors of the community should be involved. Different ministries, tourism is going to be affected, should be involved. And as a responsible opposition, we certainly will want to play a role as much as we are asked to do so. I must say also in this opening statement that I recall in a period in government when we had an upsurge of some criminal activities. Nothing compared to what we are seeing today, but it was worrying to us. What we did, we called on all stakeholders and we said, look, let us meet. We as government have some ideas, but we don't have all the solutions. We would want to have a session, and we want to come up with a program of activities that can help to deal with the present situation. And we did get support from all sectors, and we came up with a plan of action. In fact, I'm suggesting that the government should, in fact, take a look at the program that was decided then. I'm pretty sure there would be modifications or additional initiatives that can be taken. But I think it's important that they can look at this. It's on the record and take it from there. But we are concerned, and therefore we believe that it's the right time. I made statements in the Parliament to just on Tuesday, but I felt given the restricted time of 15 minutes, clearly that was not sufficient. A number of views that the opposition has. Honorable Peter David made some intervention also, and some good ideas coming out from this. And other members did make statements as it relates to their concerns in their various communities on the issue of crime in the country as it is now prevailing in our country at this time. So I welcome the opportunity, and I of course welcome Selwyn, you being the experienced person that you are, over that having the opportunity to listen to your questions and of course answer as appropriately as I can.
Let me say pleasant morning, pleasant day as a matter of fact. I am worried over the issue, and as a communications person, with the fact that there seems to be some sort of inaction, right? And I am saying this to say that you wouldn't believe, surprisingly, a short while ago, I understand that there were 5 murders last night in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And insofar as the police commissioner called it mass shooting, right? And it has heightened the kind of spirit for security, because definitely it's pretty shocking. What would you perceive may have been the government's inaction on this? Because it's been creeping up over a period of time. It was there, not on the surface, it has now come to the surface. And what would you probably perceive might have been the government's inaction? Because just recently they had this regional crime and violence summit in Trinidad, and I think the Prime Minister attended it. Do you feel it is a matter that they were not taking this issue that seriously?
Well, it's not just that they have not taken the issue seriously. My own perception is that their action has been, to some extent, their actions are contributing to the factors related to what can be perceived as the problems that we are facing. There's no doubt we have a serious issue in the country of economic stress. All sectors of the society are telling you that they are under serious stress. The police service, in a time of security concerns, clearly the police force must be seen as one of the most critical factors in arresting the present situation. And what you find? Strangely so. And I've been pointing it out in statements I've made. There a serious erosion of confidence and a serious issue of moral of the police force officers that are responsible for governing, for dealing with security. And the government cannot duck responsibility for this, because the government was elected to manage the affairs of the country. Security is a major component of this. The government proceeded to use the politics of victimization within the police force, thereby sidelining good, competent officers in the name of political, what do you call it, rebalancing, restorative justice, big words, which is serious, which frightens a lot of people, because competent officers, we had an FIU that was identified as one of the best FIU in the entire region. It's well known. Officers there. Somehow, people that are perceived to be in positions under the past government is perceived to be aligned with the government politically, and that is far from the truth. So many of them have been moved. So you have literally dismantled the FIU, which is a critical component of dealing with criminal activities in and outside of the country, where Grenadians are concerned. And that was a problem. Police officers have been transferred overnight. They will get elected, then people just come to them, tell them, look, you go to this village tomorrow, this parish the next day. Because of the perception, one basis, the perception of their relationship with. In fact, I know of a few cases that people that never supported us, but they were perceived because we operated a government on the basis of the best officers must be utilized, whether they support or not, the government of the day. And they were moved. They made them a political opposition person by their victimizing those individuals, causing their own selves political problems, which is rather strange. So the police force, the government, if it is serious about arresting the situation, must correct take corrective action with respect to that politics of victimization, or what they call rebalancing, restorative justice. I don't know what that means in the context of fighting crime in the country. The best officers must be involved. I also believe stress related in the public service. There is a tremendous drop in the morale of the public service. I know that for a fact, and who don't want to admit it, I think it's just trying to pretend otherwise. Because clearly, people have been promoted without no concept of on what yardstick is being used. The only yardstick is the closeness to a politician or the perceived closeness to somebody who is opposed to the government. You must have problems. So a lot of competent officers have been moved from the position in the public service. So you had every day, every week, every 2 weeks, every month, you're hearing stories of people not being paid. And I cannot say when people call me and they said, I have not got paid. The government boss, they don't have any money. I say, no, I can't even go that far. I'm not sure the issue is about money. Because I believe that the major problem must be because the officers who will replace those competent officers do not know the job. So they are just learning the job. So a lot of things are not being done on time or appropriately to ensure that people get paid. What excuse you can give for government over the years having commitment for particular service and working in many areas, and they were paid never a day, a month. They were late in payment under the previous government. All of a sudden, they have to call 2 weeks after the month end. They have to call even the Prime Minister. I understand many of them told me they call the Prime Minister. I would be worried. I was Prime Minister, and a man gives service to the government, he has to call me. I would ask myself, what am I doing in this thing? That's not my job. And it's only after they call the Prime Minister they get paid. And so more and more people are doing it. You see the point? The problem would mount on the Prime Minister and the government as a whole. So this is a very serious matter, and it has to be addressed. And I am saying this is an area that of serious. What excuse you can give? I was driving about 3 weeks ago in the countryside, and that's why I wouldn't say where, because I don't want people being, see, there's a perception of fear in the country. And apparently there's people doing the pitching gang with the asphalt, the coal mix, on the road working. And they recognized me and stopped me. They shouted me out, and I told the driver to stop. And I went, stood up and talked, and they said, Doc, talk for us now. 4 fortnights we working, no money. 4 fortnights, you know. So I said, I had not heard this from anybody working in my area. So I said maybe they made a mistake. So I made calls afterwards to certain other persons I know normally perform their work. They said, that's true. So I said to them, why then are you still working if 4 weeks you don't get paid? They say, well, Doc, if we don't work, we surely would never get paid. But if we work, we hope one day we'll get, so we're still coming out. But these are poor people. These are not people at my level that I can say that whether I get paid this month or not, I will continue to live properly. These are people almost on a week-to-week basis live by the resources that they earn on the job that they're doing. So I'm saying, all that is saying, the government has contributed to the problem they're facing. The issue of youth, just make the points. It's a serious issue. All the programs that we had in place to help the young people of the country, I don't want to go into all of them, many of them have been dismantled. Many of the e-manis have been sent home, and they are now Some of them, even those who are working, they cut the stipend they used to get. They just cut fund one day and they collect the resources and they see they take $200 from it. They wonder why. So they get a shortage. Even those who are now still working. Some I would say, I can't say all because I can't speak for all of them. So all these are telling you something. And I just want to mention the last thing. You see, this politics of victimization, this politics is a dangerous politics. And I urge the government to make a turnaround fast, because it is working tremendously against the government. I don't think the government understands. When you get a vote, it's not a vote to put in your pocket and tie it, They must understand. If they look at what happened to the NNP, we had 15 seats in 2018, And we lost 9. We lost 9, yes. In just 4 years, the NDC in 2008 had 11 seats. And I remember telling a member in Parliament one day, I was telling him about the problem people facing and how the government is losing support. And he told me, I won by 1,500 votes. I said, put it in your pocket and tie it, stitch it. You will find out in 4 years. 4 years, the same 1,600 votes disappeared. He was beaten by 600 votes. So it was a 2,200 difference in just 6 years. In just 4 years, 5 years, sorry. So the government does not seem to understand the level of political opposition and hostility that they are creating for themselves. They cannot blame the NNP. Because people have been saying, Doc, when they mean, Doc, you're not saying nothing. They cannot say, because I've been very quiet. The people made a change. I always believe that you have to accept in anything you're doing, when you lose, you have to be a good loser. If you want to be a good winner, you must be a good loser. And I've always consistently accepted, whenever we've lost an election, I've always complimented the government, while I'm disappointed with the loss. I did it in 1990, I did it in 2008, and I did it again in 2022. And let me make this point. I have never, with all elections we have won, no time the opposition NDC has ever complimented me or the government or any office of my government on the victory. In other words, they have never demonstrated that they've been a good loser. And that's an unfortunate. So the politics of victimization is, and there are other issues I could mention, but I think I've given enough.
As you speak about the politicization, and I noticed that one among the suggestions as it relates to fighting the issue or dealing with the matter is the community spirit.
Yes.
How we get back the community spirit.
Yes.
Do you think that time has elapsed on us as it relates to that? Because within the communities themselves, there is the same political victimization with NDC jeering at NNP, NNP jeering at NDC, NDC is pushing that power structure within the communities. How do we get across that? Especially in a time like now, dealing with the issue where we notice that the violence and crime is flaring up within the communities.
Well, let me make the point. In any given situation and any grouping, you would have elements that may not necessarily do and say the right things, and we proceed to work together. It happens in the NDC, it happens in the NNP. But I think the key thing is the leadership must never be seen as encouraging their supporters to malign unfairly or to victimize unfairly their opponent. I go in villages. Up to last week I was in a village and a question was asked, and I said to them, let me tell you something. I don't want you to go out there and curse your sister and brother for politics. You could state your position on an issue. That's okay. If the government is doing something that's not right and you see your friend or family or villager supporting it, you can criticize that. But never get into personal attacks and hostility and anger because I make the point. I said to them, I said, let me tell you this. You go down in your village today and you go up sick. Would you be seeing me? Or you may be seeing an NNP person? You sure? Not necessarily. He might be the same NDC supporter who have to come to your rescue. So always maintain that civility and relationship as you go forward. So I think the issue is leadership. I do not hear any member of the present leadership speaking to people about not doing these things. I don't hear it. In fact, I get the impression it's condoned. And it's being laughed at. When I was making the point in Parliament, I never forget, I can't believe this. That is the only time I got emotional in Parliament last Tuesday. I was speaking about the government taking away $150 from the poor old man or old lady who has to buy Pampers, who has to buy medication, and with the cost of living and food, with things that skyrocketing every day. And two members on the opposite side laughing. I stop. And I say, yeah, you could laugh. Things nice with you. But the average man outside catching his nenen, you have no feelings. And he voted for you. Some of them did. But you're laughing. I saw the face got serious afterwards. At least they understood something was fundamentally wrong with that. So I'm making the point that this is an issue we must, and that's why we need to work together. As I said to people, there are enough issues in politics that we can score political points on with respect to each other. We don't need to divide one another and cause division as a way to solve problems in any society. And I will never be part. My history, I cannot sit here and tell you that everything that I wish to see happen during the period of my government, that every member of my government, even at the leadership level or at the constituency level, have conducted themselves in the manner that I want to see. But I will never condone it. In fact, I've spoken to members when I see this going the wrong way, that this is not the approach, because you have to be your brother's keeper. Remember that always.
In a sense, you're telling me that you want to see some programs, even at this time of emergency. Who is going to effect those programs? I hear the call from you in Parliament.
Well, we hope the government will now, with the statements we're making, would call on, the NNP will provide representation. It doesn't have to be me. Some of them have a problem with Keith Mitchell, the person, I suppose, and that's okay. So if they don't want me, they could call and they would have to identify, they would have to deal with the leader of the opposition. But we have excellent members in opposition that can, in fact, provide, be part of a consultative group going forward. So it doesn't have to be me, but I clearly have to give some endorsement and support if the NNP has to be involved in any serious activity. So I honestly tell, when we had the Grand Baccalaureate, you know that center, we are constantly reviewing and understanding what's happening in our society. So we saw issues of concern. We saw young girls are being misused by some older men in the society and being taken advantage of. Some of them are young people without guidance and support. We know the family unit is not as strong as it was when we were growing up. So we recognize that we have to take some steps. So we created this issue because a lot of the young girls were finding themselves in issues that destroy them. And we created this institution at the Grand Baccalaureate. And we had a lot of programs. No, if I cannot sit here and say that it was perfect, I would suggest the government examine that, because they've been dismantling some of the officers that work there. They're changing the guard, so to speak, because everything has to be politicized. You know, but I am saying, I would suggest that they review, restore some of the programs that we had, or improve on it and expand it. And the government and the opposition will certainly give all the support in the process of dealing with it. So I think the Grand Baccalaureate program would be an important program to deal with. There might be another center. Might the government want to look at opening up and increasing the activity, because you will see more and more problems coming forward. That way we need to take interventions and to help the young people as we go forward. So I am suggesting there's more that needs to be done.
I see there's some need for, based on the fact that you mentioned the churches, called out to the churches, most times there's the belief that people call to God for that kind of hope and to get that motivation going. How do you see this happening? Because over the period of time there have been a lot of infractions in the society where the churches were called out to help. Is it a matter of resurrecting that kind of feeling within the churches so that they can come out?
Well, I think we live in a Christian society, and I think a lot of our people fundamentally believe have strong religious views, and I think the churches will always be seen as a very useful component of solving issues of problems in our society. And we have people in churches who are very passionate members and follow the leadership guidance in many, many respects. And I think if all the churches get involved in helping in their own communities, even if not at the national level, because you can have a national activities at what the leadership level of the churches with government and other person, but at the community level, I think it can certainly help to bring the message of hope. There are some churches I know that have been doing a pretty good job, not just now, but even before. I know some churches who recognize that there are problems and they have to attract the young people. Every time I go to a church, the first thing I do, I look around to see the composition of the congregation. And I always tell my church, the Catholic Church, I said, look, sometimes I go to church and I see I'm one of the youngest person there. So I say, boy, we're in trouble. Because I shouldn't be anywhere close to that. But I go to some other churches and I see a lot of young people. And I always go up to the pastor and the church leader and I compliment them and I say, look, I am so impressed to you're able to get these young boys and young girls in your congregation. There's some churches I know they have classes in the afternoon teaching the young people to use the computer and to do to deal with the new system of communication. And I think the young people will be attracted. And that's the one way you can use to attract them to get involved in more religious activities. And recently, as I go around, I've seen some churches having congregation and village activities where the members walking the streets and preaching message of hope. And I think that's an excellent idea. I've seen it up to last Sunday. I was coming from my church. And as I was coming out, I saw a whole congregation, about 100 plus members. So I stopped and asked them, what is this about? They said, Doc, this is a church and we want to do our own, make our own contribution to help the atmosphere of hope and in the country as a whole. And I see a number of churches doing it, and I would suggest more and more of that is necessary.
Basically getting the message of awareness around, because there ought to be national consensus on this now, because as it is, I would say it has totally gone out of control. I mean, looking at Grenada over the past time, and you have 14 situations of that serious nature, and we're so closely knitted in the true sense, family-wise, community-wise. How do you see the media playing a role in all this?
I have to be frank. Honestly, I've seen the media is so important. Selwyn is so important in a developing society. But I must say, I shudder when I see the type of thing that is coming from some section of the media, where I know that people that have more experience and can do better, where they don't seem to recognize that they have a powerful responsibility, and that worries me a lot. I know Gary, in introducing this program, talked about you, Selwyn, and you know exactly what he's talking about. I mean, you remember every day I always talk about the Leslie Pear, the Alistair Hughes. No one could say that these people were biased to the point that because they might give a vote to a political party, you can tell them and do what you want, and they don't say a word. There's Alistair Hughes, Leslie Pear. Any time I was in government and something happens where the government has been accused, I get a call from Leslie Pear. Hey, what going on there now? What stupidness are they doing now? And then I have to explain. Similarly with Alistair Hughes, it challenges you, and so on. And then he asks you questions, and then he writes his report. I'm sure he went and asked the persons on the other side the same questions, and then he writes his report. Sometimes I agree, and sometimes I don't agree, but I don't have to agree. So sometimes I meet Leslie and I say, what stupidness you writing? He said, that's my right to write stupidness. But that is what I think. So I think the media, I value, I know the station you work with, and I know the level of the new broadcast. I see it all the time. I think it is highly professional when I listen to it, and some of the stations. But I see news coming from more major TV stations, and it worries you. A rumor comes out, and they don't even ask the other side, and they just put out the information given because they maybe have a bias, and it's okay to have a bias. I have no problem with any media person deciding they don't like the NMP or they don't like NDC, or they wouldn't support them. But you have a responsibility as a professional to do your work without fear or favor. And that if I come to you as an NMP supporter and I tell you, this NDC person did this, and you don't just go and put it out because I tell you, because you know I'm opposed to that person. You must give the other person an opportunity to respond. And then you use your judgment, as Alistair McIntyre and Leslie Pear and others in those areas. There are other good, Jerry Romaine and all this. Even Lou Smith. I always tell people, I know Lou had his bias, but I've never saw Lou as somebody who just go and say things just because of his political position. When I did interview with Lou, I cannot say that he was being unfair in his terms of his questioning or his assessment of the question. I always respected that, but I knew his political position.
But at this time, the media needs a shake-up in that respect, because if you have to create programs of awareness and sensitize the nation as it relates to stemming the tide, something has to happen within that framework. I
agree. The question is, who's going to bail the cat?
Would it be the leadership?
Well, I would assume so. I don't, honestly, I'm at loss where this one is concerned. I have rarely given interviews to certain media persons because I think it's many cases I see them as being so extreme in their biasness. They don't seem to know that they have a role of being independent. So I sometimes tell them I'm not going to waste my time. I mean, if I have a press conference, you come and answer any question, and I will do so. But I am not going to expose myself just like that, knowing that these people, some of those persons I'm talking about, don't seem to have no understanding of the seriousness of the role as a media person. That's my concern.
Quite recently, I noticed that you have taken up the responsibility to go to various centers and speak with young people.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that a lot of them are being attracted
Yes.
as it relates to that program. Do you see more of it needed as it relates
Much
to
more.
our situation
Oh, yeah,
now?
absolutely, absolutely. I think we need, clearly, I think when you look at some of the actions of some of our young people, you realize, in some cases, I feel they're asking for help. And sometimes I get the impression when we criticize them, really we should be criticizing ourselves. Because these are our children and grandchildren. So if they're behaving so, the question is, where do they get it from? What are the guidance coming from the homes in the community, our homes? Where do they get it from? What are we collectively as responsible persons doing to help them, to guide them? We can't just sit there and say this boy is bad and this girl is bad and this one is... We have a responsibility. What hope are we giving them? Are we creating jobs to tell them, look, to get this training, here is a job you will find possibilities in? We're not giving you anything, but we're giving you opportunities to create something for yourself. What are we doing? I think these issues are absolutely so crucial. So we need more of that. We need more counseling. I think we need to look at probably a counseling session in maybe a parish where young people can go in and they have their frustration. Because some people you see that commit suicide. Sometimes somebody commits suicide and you think, oh, this man, I know this guy and this girl. It's strange. That's not the same person, When somebody reaches the point of going and commit suicide, they have lost their mind. Outside there and leaving this earth is almost an excitement for them. So our job, how do we reach them before they reach that stage? And when they get to the stage of frustration, where do they go to get help? So we need to have more counseling sessions and support psychosocial sessions where we can help people to look at a more positive side and to correct some of the problems that they're having going forward. And I think that we need more and more of those sessions. So I would suggest counseling sessions in the schools. We need to do that because a lot of the problems start in school. And if we don't correct it then or intervene then, the problem magnifies when they leave school. With the frustration of not finding a job, a frustration of dealing with problems at home that they cannot solve, and frustration, generally speaking, with how they see themselves as individuals mounting every day.
On the basis of all that, finding the problem, identifying the problem, finding solutions to the problem, looking at the current administration's 1 year in office, would you, with your experience into the political frame, administration likewise, would you say it's time for the government to change direction somewhat?
Well, I'm telling you this. I can't be the advisor because if I say, I get the impression if I tell them to stand up, they'll run. If I tell them run, they're going to stand up. So I may not, but I only have to say it for people for what it's worth. I am very clear that if they continue on this path, it's going to be very difficult for them to keep the population quiet because people are getting extremely frustrated. And my fear is that innocent people can get hurt in the process. Anytime a country goes into instability and chaos, it is not just those in authority that's to worry. All of us have to worry. It's our country and our lives at stake. Look, look at my situation, my village. I go to the gym sometimes 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I pass villages. The incident that occurred just after, I could have passed. And so I could have got damaged because there was a shootout. A gang was firing at the police and the police firing back in a village. This is where I have never seen that in our country before. So an innocent person like myself could have been damaged. at that time in the morning. So I think it's something that we cannot sit there and say this is just that's a government problem and that's the, according to people, that's all our problem. So they have to change course. And if they change course, they have my total support in terms of the issues. As I said, there is enough issue to score political points. I'm not worried about our actions or political base of support relative to the NDC, because I think they're doing enough damage with the economy and the lack of opportunity, lack of vision, the amount of lies that are being told to people. People are counting the lies. They have enough, so I don't have to create anything. See this issue of crime? Let's drop everything. We're division. Let's work together on dealing with that. It requires all of us to support.
Dr. Mitchell, nice hearing from you on that aspect. You mentioned the fact about leadership. Yeah, and I know that in any organization, as a matter of fact, in Grenada has a culture when there's a leader, all the work falls on.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's true.
He has to be able to lead from the front.
Yes.
Would you say his apprenticeship causes him not to face the reality in the true sense? Because as it is now, it's a different dispensation with crime and violence here. We're talking about guns.
Yes. And the drug issue. The drug issue. No, I think it is clear that the present leader, I think because he may not have been a serious mixer before politics, can be a serious hindrance to his understanding of what's taking place on the ground. That is my assessment. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I can only say what I feel and see. I get the impression he's not a very comfortable person around the ground, so to speak. When he's dealing with people, you could see the discomfort. When he speaks as if he's in a classroom as a professor. But you don't see the passion. You don't see empathy. You don't see love. You see a man articulating a position from a theoretical or what I would say intellectual standpoint. But that is not politics. That is not politics. So I think his lack of political activity or community type activity before entrance in leadership of the country must be a serious hindrance to what is his approach to some of the problems taking place. And again, that is my assessment. Because let's face it, I warned the population, but my view is just my view. The population felt differently and I accepted it. That most of the element in the persons running for office on the opposition side had literally no experience in governance, from the captain down to the team, the lowest level of the team. And I say, if you elect them in office, realize that they're going to have to learn on the job, so to speak. Well, it's far worse than that. Even my assessment of what can happen, that my expectation is certainly what is happening is far worse than I thought could have prevailed if they were elected as they were, and so on. So I believe the lack of apprenticeship must be a factor. So he's now learning, and I hope by learning,
lack of professionalism,
and by people like myself being outspoken. And because I know sometimes you will see the dogs at the back all over the place. Sometimes people behave as if we're in a Rottweiler business. Then somebody say something and jump on their back and start cursing and getting on. And I don't think we should be in that. We are not animals. We are human beings. We may have differences. We don't necessarily support certain actions, but we should all work together. I don't like some of the behavior patterns where we behave like animals. I believe we need to learn to work together in going forward, because we're facing some serious issues and we're facing some serious problems facing our country, and I think it's important for us to.
And the nation needs hope.
Need hope.
I remember in your time, you usually call it instances for a national day of prayer.
Yeah, yes.
Would you see something like that?
No, all this could help. You know, I think by calling, it would show that you understand there is a problem. At least you understand that you need divine intervention, but our God tells us He helped those who help themselves. He would intervene, but you can't just sit down and say, I will pray, and that ends the story. What else can you do as individuals on your own? And then He would use His divine powers to help us on the way to helping ourselves. And I think that should be the approach taken.
Any final words you would like to dispatch as we rounding up this conversation?
My own last word is that the government must start to lead and be more proactive. I don't see how months have to pass with an obvious problem, growing crisis of crime in the country. And only when people start calling and say, well, they need Dr. Keith Mitchell to make a statement. I hear people on the radio. That's when you come out and say, well, you're going to say something. I find it took too long. So I believe the government must be much more proactive. It seems that the government concentration on photo op. If they go out in the street, if they go and plant a flower, they want a photo op and put it on social media and so on. I think there seems to be a concentration on image, not actually dealing with people's lives. When you're in opposition, this thing would work, you know, because the government has the responsibility to manage, so you can easily take photo up in criticizing the government for the lack of what is not being done or not being done as well as it should be. But when you're in government, photo ops won't work. And unfortunately, they seem to think that is the campaigning still. The campaign has been done a whole year plus ago, but the government seems to be campaigning. So campaigning still. So a word to them is that stop the campaigning. Let's get down to work. Start solving people's problems. Start dealing with the pain and the hurt that exists outside there. The frustration of the market vendors. You move them from Queen's Park, where they were making a living. Why? You didn't know. Then all over the place, they can't sell nothing. So the hunger is prevailing. The increasing stress is prevailing. Your farmers are having problems. The fishermen are having problems. The bus drivers, I was just talking to what our brother was saying a while ago. The bus not moving because they said, well, we're driving and we're not getting passengers and gas price so high. So the busmen complaining, right? So everyone, almost every shopkeepers, the shopkeepers I know, even in my own constituency, I know it. They tell me when I say, but why are you not open? Doc, when I open, sometimes me alone in the shop for a day, I just burn in current. And nobody comes, so a lot of time I don't open. So a lot of places where you see young men and people liming on a Friday and a Thursday afternoon, empty. No activity at all, and so on. So there are enormous problems. So I just hope, in prayer, I would say, the government must start to lead, and the photo op must become something of the past. You can take your photo off, but do something and then take a photo off from it. Not just posing, and talking, and not affecting people's lives in any serious. That would be my final statement.
Thank you very much. It's nice being here with you, and as usual, if you notice, I've changed my tone. I love conversation, not interviews.
No, and I agree, and that to me is the best approach, yes. Because then you feel free to express yourself on views that you think are important, and you yourself, as living in the country and you move around, say, yeah, you are what people are saying. And we have a responsibility, and I wish the Prime Minister himself would be dealing with that. Issues of that nature, instead of just speaking to people, just sit down, listen, and respond accordingly. Face that the people may not be right, you know, in some cases, but you still have to face them and respond accordingly.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, indeed, it was a pleasure talking with you, Dr. Mitchell, today, and you have shared quite a lot. And I do trust and hope that the ideas that you have expounded, the government will see it fit to utilize some of them. Because, as I've said, 23 years of being Prime Minister and over 2 decades being Minister of National Security, you have experience, and experience that you provide information that can be used, and I do trust the government will see it fit to implement some of those ideas, because as it is at this point in time, the entire country is hurting from what we are seeing. And as we said, quite a lot of guns have been seized in the country at this point in time. So crime has taken a different outlook in as much as guns is at play. But we want to thank you, and we want to thank you for what you've been able to say to us today. And we look forward to continuing those sort of chit-chats, because there are issues and we want to deal with them head on. And with your experience, we know we can count on you. And of course, I know the nation want to hear from you, because at this point in time, we need to fix Grenada and we need to heal Grenada. And you have a role to help us in doing this. Thanks again, and God bless you.